Hey everybody, we're back with another comic book spoiler review, and today I'll be covering another Marvel Max line, Blade. And this is the second one that I did. The first one was Punisher Max, which is up on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. If you want to check out, that's one of my longest reviews, comic book reviews that I've done on the channel. This one is written by Christopher Hinz and Steve Pugh, and it's like 6-issue miniseries, so fairly quick. Since this week I'm covering a lot of Blade stuff, including the Marvel anime Blade, which I took over a lot of the Marvel anime shows, X-Men, Iron Man, and Wolverine, which you can check out all of those on my channel as well. So Blade was the last one, and I wanted to wait until October to cover that. So this week I'm covering a lot of Blade stuff. So the comic, the movies, and the show, which I figure by the end of the week I'll have the show up and ready to cover. And this was made around 2002. I think it was around the time Blade 2 was out. So of course, Wesley Snipes is on the... Every time you think of Blade, you think of Wesley Snipes. I know you got Mahershala Ali as the new Blade for the MCU. I'm sorry. In my personal opinion, I always want to see him as Cottonmouth, and it's like, I know you can't use Wesley Snipes because, you know, despite him still looking pretty good and keeping in shape, he's still, like, I think he's in his like late 50s, early 60s at this point, so I guess he wouldn't be a viable candidate for a good tenure playing with Blade for the MCU. But it's like, this is one of my personal gripes with you know, it's not like, you know, the casting director for MCU is terrible. It's just that, and Mahershala Ali is a great actor, but it's like, you can't keep rehashing same actors that was already involved in a Marvel property, or at least MCU Marvel property previously. And he already done a great job as Cottonmouth. And yeah, you killed him off, but it's like, you couldn't find any other person who hasn't been involved in the MCU yet to be involved. My personal thing. But yeah, but I always think of Wesley Snipes, and he kind of set off in terms of Marvel films. It's because of him and the first Blade movie that really jump-started a lot of the Marvel films, whether good or bad. He set, you know, things in motion. A black man set things in motion to what we like in terms of Marvel films, and at least blazed the trail. So it's like, you know, this dude get his props. And Blade, and you know, in the past several years at this point, has been very active in the Marvel comics. And as a matter of fact, in the past few years, he's been involved, at least at this point, this is at least 2 years at this point, has been actively involved in as a member of the Avengers, which some might argue seems kind of weird to have somebody like Blade involved with the Avengers, where he's just primarily somebody who just not known to take out, like, you know, threats that's not vampire related. It's kind of like trying to have like the Punisher on the Avengers, which is, it'd be weird. Unlike most people who don't like the idea of the Punisher interacting with other members of the Marvel universe, I still like it because it makes, you know, it, you know, like an actual universe where, you know, somebody like Iron Man could, you know, be dealing with the Punisher or whatever, because they all come from the same world. But I draw the line. I won't say I draw the line. It's not like I take a hard stance on it, but it's just like I understand why it seems off to have somebody like Blade and Punisher. And the Punisher never been involved in the Avengers, but you see my point. It's like these guys are on, like, operate on a different wavelength. It's not like Wolverine, where Wolverine is very malleable in terms of being a street, you know, like, you know, like fighting street crime, or fighting otherworldly threats, or evil mutants, or your occasional superpower, you know, bad guy like Molten Man or Doctor Doom or whatever. But Blade, usually primarily vampires he's dealing with, but I digress. I had to be careful with certain images because it is a Max line and they do have, you know, certain explicit stuff here. But anyway, the story begins where this. Now I want to take a moment here. The art in here sucks. I do not care for this art in here. This lady, the way she's depicted in one particular panel, looks make her jawline and lips look weird, like just really out there. And it's like, it doesn't show up in other panels. It looks a little bit better, but that's one particular panel after this where her jaw and lips look bulbous and, you know, just weird. And it's like, man, it's like they could have chose a whole entire different artist. But anyway, this woman named Susan is being chased by these obviously off-looking. It was made in 2002, and obviously, like, I guess, you know, is, you know, probably the same year as Blade 2 was about to come out. But you already know about Blade 1. You just can, and this is one of the gripes I have with this outside the illustration. You couldn't just make, it's not like, you know, there wasn't guys with spiky hair, but it's just, you could just make these guys normal looking people. You gotta add like extra stuff to make them super demonic. They're vampires. Just make them look like people, but with fangs. And yeah, sure, maybe the occasional, you know, red eyes just to make them very distinct, but you don't need to make them look like demons too. That's just my personal take, honestly. But she's getting chased through the street after her car broke down, you know, unexpectedly, and like the, you know, phone she has couldn't get no signal. They set up some type of like interference just to, you know, trap unsuspecting passerby drivers. And while she was getting cornered by these thugs, these vampire thugs, she is seemingly rescued by this other creature who we will dub like Trix. And this Trick, like a kind of like a super vampire in a way, you know, takes out all these vampires and just, you know, flies off. And while Blade at the same time going on a particular mission, going through this police precinct where these cops are bringing in these thugs. Turns out these cops are vampires. At least 3 of these cops are vampires, and Blade comes in and dispatches all of them. Only after 2 out of the 3 of those thugs they brought in were murdered already. And so Blade meets up, and of course Blade always has these like helpers that he saved along the way throughout his adventures. One in particular, this older lady, I forgot her doggone name. Her husband named Caesar. I do remember that because of the fact that his name's Caesar. Blade helped her after her ex-husband was turned into a vampire, and he saved her from him. And then later she remarried. But since then she became like not like a whistler or anything like that, but essentially she is like the person is like a head of a neighborhood watch type of situation, where she got the local people keeping, especially like the local grandmas who always, you know what's going on in the neighborhoods, give him word about what's happening in the city, vampire related, so that way he always can be one step ahead. Oh, I almost forgot. I want to cover like Blade's like powers, and of course it's fairly obvious, but for all intents and purposes, I kind of want to do this sometimes. I think I got used to it after all those X-Men solo comics I was going through, just to cover their powers and abilities. Blade here is a Dampier, which is half human, half vampire. And of course, you know the story if you watched the first Blade film or read any of the Blade comics. Blade, who's technically a British black guy, but in most cases he is written and depicted as a black American. But I just thought I'd give that bit of tidbit, extra little factoid about Blade. But when his mother was pregnant with him, she was bitten by a vampire. Normally is Deacon Frost. And when she gave birth to him, he was born as half human, half vampire, which is only happens a handful of times according to most interpretations. And he's got a unique physiology. The enzymes in Blade's blood, his name's Eric Brooks, that's his real name. But the enzymes in Blade's blood made him immune to normal vampire bites, uniquely attuned to sensing the supernatural and resistant to aging. Since being bitten by Morbius, Blade has gained many of the traditional powers of the vampire without developing their weaknesses. He has superhuman strength, senses, stamina, plus an accelerated healing factor. Acute senses, super strength. He can lift about 1 ton. Superhuman speed. Agility, stamina, durability, healing factor. He can heal from mild to moderate injuries with greater speed than humans. Contaminant transversal. Eric can take any kind of ingestible or even metaphysical ailments coursing in the system of another living being, or willingly introduce into his system and pass it along in the same way. Vampire transfer their mitochondria pathogen that turns others into their thralls. Having used such a factor of his vamp-like body to drain away the taint, which remade Robbie Reyes into a more monstrous form of Ghost Rider, as well as used it to use it to cure a cure King T'Challa developed, which nullifies the Roxxon Berserker Shock Trooper Hulk-like transformation abilities. Prolonged lifespan. Although not a pure vampire, he does have the advantage of being a hybrid. This includes a pseudo-immortality, greatly enhanced lifespan. This has also been noted in the Superhuman Registration Act as one of his abilities, as no change of his appearance has been seen during his time on Earth, besides losing his hair sometimes. Immunity to vampire vulnerabilities. True vampires have numerous and very particular supernatural vulnerabilities, most of which Blade is totally immune to. For instance, Blade is unaffected by direct exposure to sunlight, whereas most vampires are either rendered comatose during the daylight hours or are quickly incinerated when exposed directly to sunlight. Vampires are also highly allergic to silver, Blade himself could be injured by a silver weapon, much as an ordinary human would, but its healing powers would be able to heal it as fast as if it were an ordinary wound. Blade is also immune to effects of religious icons, such as crucifixes, whereas vampires is rendered almost powerless when confronted by them. Transformation. Blade seemingly possesses the ability to change to and from human to a more monstrous state of being by force of will. Wing manifestation. Blade's transformed state comes with the added proclivity of bat-like aviary appendages that enable him to fly around at high speed, picking up Steve Rogers in a flash before Hyperion could react in time to catch him. A master martial artist, expert marksman, swordsman, weapon proficiency, multilingual, speaks fluent German, English, German, Romanian, and Japanese. Expert driver, sorcery. He showed exceptional powers in sorcery and the supernatural. He assumed that Photon's light mimicry of Sumagaraf's shields would buy them time, and was able to guide Power Man to utilize his chi in much greater and diverse ways that he never had before, creating an astral tiger to defeat him on both levels as he had theorized. Intimidation. Weaknesses. Blade does possess one weakness common to all vampires, the need to ingest fresh blood in order to stay alive. However, rather than consume blood, he ingests or injects a specially designed serum that provides even better nourishment that blood would provide. If Blade doesn't drink the serum for an extended period of time, he will weaken and his self-control will be stretched. He will be forced to attack a human and consume his or her blood if this period is more than a week. Blade does have a special meditation to maintain his self-control and a huge amount of blood serum in his inventory. One serum is enough for 24 hours of extended combat, or he can use it to quickly recover from grave wounds. However, an extended period of time without consuming either blood or the serum would prove fatal. Vulnerability to red sunlight. While not affected by normal yellow sunlight and immune to all other weaknesses of traditional vampires, Blade has been shown to be vulnerable to red sunlight, which is able to burn his skin. Longer exposure to red sunlight can be fatal. So it's kind of like red solar radiation with Superman, where it takes away his powers. Very unique. But how often do Blade come across red sunlight? Unless somebody specifically knows about that particular weakness and specifically have the technology to create red solar sunlight. Matter of fact, it'd be kind of fun to have like a brand new enemy for Blade, kind of like Whistler made a Blade into like a powerful vampire killer. A vampire like Whistler could easily make a not like a human Blade killer, but just like train a particular vampire from the time that he or she is sired to be particularly trained into studying Blade. I know it's kind of like the way with Blade 2, but they didn't really utilize that. They're supposed to be trained to take him out, but they didn't really utilize any particular way to counter him. But in the comics, they should make a particular new villain for Blade that studies his moves for a couple of years, track his patterns, all the stuff that Blade does, this particular character will do, and study about, since he's immune to yellow sunlight, I got red solar grenades that will, affect him. Make some kind of anti-serum to inject him with, so that way it kind of forms maybe some kind of blocker, so anytime you try to take a serum, it isn't having like an effect, and just kind of draws out his hunger and makes him not effective in a fight because he's so concerned about feeding. Something like that. That'd be kind of dope. Anyway, the lady ends up giving Blade this note about Susan, who was attacked by a group of vampires, And she also trying to, all through this adventure, trying to set up Blade with this woman, because previous adventure, Blade had a girlfriend named Yala something. It's a stupid name. There's a lot of stupid, weirdly configured names here, and I'm not going to sit there and try to remember it because it sounds really stupid. It could just gone with something simple as Megan or something. But Yao, let's call her Yao. Yao, you'll learn from this adventure, was somebody special for Blade, and she died. So upon her death, it was at that point he stopped using his swords. You'll learn why later. But he ends up going to Susan's place, and it's kind of like the woman in the first Blade movie, as he's going over about there's there's another world, like, you better wake up, because the world is just sugar coated topping. There's another world. That's like, I can't help but not think that in this panel, because it's like, oh my god, it's like I can't wait to go through the Blade movies again, because it's been a minute. But he's going about Hermonus Nocturna, Latin for vampire. And it's like, just immediately think of the first Blade movie. There's another world. But while guys like me deal with the vampire threat, there's also another sub group of vampires, which we'll later know to be the Tricks, that she doesn't know why this particular vampire did not attack me when they had the opportunity. And it's like, I don't know, Blade's gonna find out, because some vampires are sadists. Sometimes they'll kill you outright, sometimes they probably already fed. This could be a myriad of reasons. All of this going on, we learn about this corporation, or this organization, kind of like the MIB but for supernatural threats, where it's called the Seven, not to be confused with the Seven from The Boys, where they used to be a group that hunt down and killed all forms of creatures, particularly vampires. But after a while, once they realize that there's a delicate balance to things, where one side cannot be greater or lower than its natural state, where it's like they realize the Tricks have to be at a certain amount or percentage of their population in order to maintain some kind of circle of life kind of situation, because they don't really care for Blade all that much, because if he kills too many of the vampires, then these Tricks will go out of control and start attacking the human population. So that is a delicate balance they need to maintain. And it's funny, you got this young guy named Kuwait, who is teaching this other guy, Cullen, who's older than him, how the tricks of the trade is. And you'll learn why this young guy is teaching. It's kind of a reverse, Agent K, Agent J situation. You'll see why this younger guy is teaching the older guy in a minute. But then you also have this added threat, which really isn't too big of a threat, but you gotta have some extra group of vampires you can just dust immediately. But it's Valencia guy, who's used to be like a Spaniard back in the day, that's supposed to have been on the same ship as Christopher Columbus, but he ended up getting bit by a vampire before the ship took off, and so he never was brought on board. And for 500 years, he lived out his life as a vampire, and now he's kind of like a crime boss in a way. And Blaze shows up to take out his clan of vampires. And while dealing with this group, all of a sudden, this uh Trick's guy shows up. Got a name like Romek, I think. And he shows up out of the blue somewhere and just annihilates a bunch of these vampires and just, you know, jumps away, not trying to attack Blade whatsoever. And which is confusing Blade. I was like, okay, something's obviously going wrong. Because I know that a lot of these vampires are heard of me. It's been active for a very, very, very long time. So Cullen and Kuwait meet up with their boss, this seemingly kid named Timothy. Yeah, Timothy. And you learn that this organization somehow, some kind of, you know, mystical means, do some kind of Benjamin Button on certain of the employees, where I don't know why, and I really wish they kind of explain why they do this. Is some kind of pseudo immortality, or it's just, you know, for all I'm gathering is that like they recruit people who are old but still want to be active in doing something, possibly used to be some type of, you know, military or police in, you know, personnel in the past, and don't want to give that up, and this allows them to reverse aging type of thing. I kind of wish there was a little bit more, you know, there's more elaborating on that. All it seemed to me is kind of dumb, because you're just reversing yourself to death the long way, reverse way. But it's pretty much like, you know, testing the wherewithal for, you know, with Cullen, and see if he's up to the task of doing what he needs to do. And Blade shows up because Blade always got to have some kind of, you know, cue to his James Bond, hook him up with all these different kind of gadgets to deal with vampires. And seemingly idiotic, but of course it has to come into play eventually, which it does, but stupid as hell, and in my opinion very inefficient, where this guy comes up with, his name is Fufu. Stupid name. There's a lot of stupid names in this. But Fufu ends up creating these garlic gumballs, where if a vampire chews on them, it, you know, it's like an adhesive that seals their mouth shut, and there's a particular enzyme that's, you know, kind of releases like all this garlic stuff in their mouths, which is fatal to them, or at least, you know, makes them easily to pick off. It's so doggone dumb. And this dude is not. There's usually a level of charm to the gadget guy for Blade. This guy sucks. But then they're in the back of this you know, shot where it helps, you know, with people with security, and also with, you know there's a gun shop too. And he sees that Susan showed up thanks to the old lady, you know, telling her like, oh, you know, if he doesn't know about, you know, what's going on, they can help you, hook you up with a gun without a waiting period, because there's uniquely, you know, weapons is uniquely tied to dealing with vampires that you want to handle right away. So Blade's obviously starting to get smitten with her, and he's teaching her how to wield a gun in order to be able to handle herself, and she ends up brazenly asking him out on a date, which he reluctantly agrees, but he's still not over with his former lover who died, you know, because of vampires. But once they realize that, you know, oh, Blade's going out of control, because they, you know, he's moving, he's too efficient, and he's dealing with all these uh vampires too far too much, to the point where it be causing an imbalance, and these tricks will be, you know, all over the place, and it's going to be, you know, at a detriment to the human population. So Timothy makes an order to assassinate Blade, and he leads it up to Kuwait and his new partner. And Blade obviously is having, like, you know, dreams about yeah, you go. Here's the stupid name, Yao Hala. It's called Yao, whatever. Stupid as hell. And he dreams about her, and it's like he's obviously feeling horrible, and he's feeling obviously responsible, because you let somebody get close, is he can't have a normal life given what he does. The same thing with, like, you know, any myriad of superheroes aside from maybe like a rare few. I won't say a rare few, this is a significant amount, but somebody like Blade and Punisher are the two primary ones. I don't think they can, you know, legit have like a normal life, because they're so committed to their job more so than any of the other superhero population, because they know there's always going to be vampires and there's always going to be crime, and they're dedicating their whole entire lives to it. But unlike the Punisher, you know, Blade can actually do this for fairly forever. I say fairly because he aged slower. Doesn't mean he's only semi-immortal. So at some point, either a vampire might get lucky, or he's do some kind of, you know, he has to do some kind of a heroic sacrifice kind of situation. Because it'll be a very, I argue he'll probably live as long. By the time the year 2099 shows up, I feel that's when he'll do this whole old man Blade situation. But at some point, Valencia captures Fufu and tortures him for information, and have his little side piece girlfriend bite off this kid's fingers, and eventually cauterize him and dish him into the river once they realize they can't get nothing from him. But it's all seemingly like he just dished him, and Blade realizes, well, we're getting ahead of myself, but Blade realizes, okay, this is obviously a trap, because they don't just out of the goodness of their undead heart just let a person go without some added thing. They know he works for Blade. But while that was going on, Blade taking out more of the sleeping clan members of Valencia, as well as familiars who are looking over their coffins during the day. We get a little, what do you call it? Like, I forgot the name, the movie name term for it, but it's pretty much like seeding, like a MacGuffin that will obviously be coming up later into the story. But this black sword that was scientifically and magically crafted years ago to take out the Trick's queen, who is, it's kind of like a, in a way, like an insect where it comes to mating, because at some point she because the Trick's queen runs the entire Trick's clan, and there's no king unless the queen chooses a male mate among the clan. And you'll think hardly anyone will actually start fighting over it to be a part of that, mostly because when one is chosen, they mate, impregnate the queen kills the mate, not unlike many insects, and you know, so the fetus will have, or at least the baby will have something to feed on, and more often than not, that baby will be another queen later on. And this tool is the only one that's able to actually successfully kill Trek's vampires. But they're gearing, Cullen and Quaid is gearing up to take out Blade, and realize, okay, we gotta use probably like sniper rifles or high power rounds, because we're not there's no way anybody will be effective dealing with Blade up close and personal, unless you got like superhuman strength, like, you know, at the very bare minimum, Luke Cage, to actually just take his head off without issue. It's best to deal with him at a distance. Then on the date with Susan, Blade tells her how he lost his former lover, where a vampire clan found out about her, kidnapped her, held her in a warehouse, and he mentions how like he probably should have just negotiated with them, but he was too stubborn to, like, not making deals with terrorists. So a couple of days later, they sent him information about where to find her. He goes to the warehouse where to find her, and she's chained up, seemingly like turned into a vampire. Like, oh my god, they turned her into a vampire. So he grabbed one of his swords, and he did what he thought will be the merciful thing for her. But after he did the deed, he come to realize the fangs are fake, the eyes, the red eyes are contacts. She was completely human. He was and he usually would have been picked up on things like that, but he's like too overwhelmed with like sadness and grief on the fact that he thought these vampires, which more often than not would be the case, they would pull crap like this, thought they turned his girlfriend into one of their own and force him to kill her, to try to hurt him in some kind of way. But it's worse, the fact that they drugged her to make her seem crazed, so he wouldn't look or think twice about a possibility that she might be real, might be like a real vampire. So now that's the reason why he stopped using his swords, because he used them to kill the person he loved. Then he gets a phone call from Caesar and his wife about Fufu. When they found him, he was found in right by the river with his fingers chopped off, and they were brought to the hospital. When Blade come to realize, they use him as bait to draw me out, and it's possible that he could turn. So, get him out of the hospital, monitor him because typically it's like 72 hours is the critical time in case somebody turns into a vampire after being bitten. 72 is like the max. But of course he didn't turn. But he never gave him up, but they used him as bait to try to lure Blade out. And as soon as Blade tells him to go throughout this one direction, he goes through the back entrance to try to see if there's anybody lying in wait. Of course, he gets ambushed and he gets knocked out. Finds himself strung up on a crucifix in like a warehouse by Valencia and his cronies. And this kind of came back from a statement earlier where he mentions to the lady that's he's working with, like, feeds him information in the neighborhood, that I spray my underwear in these kind of like garlic-esque kind of spray or something like that. So, and just in case something like this happens, it kind of repels vampires. And there's a funny line you never think to hear from Blade. He literally tells them to eat my shorts. I was like, wow. And I wish I could put up on the panel, but he is naked. And of course, they silhouetted his crotch, but still better safe than sorry, given the fact that YouTube goes crazy with that kind of stuff. But he managed to get free, gets one of his weapons, and starts killing Valencia, his girl, and a bunch of other vampires that had him held up. While Kuwait and his partner is out lying in wait, somehow they tracked him down and decided, okay, we're about to ready to pick him off. Until Romac, you know, pops up, knocks those dudes out, and knocks out Blade, and takes those 2 7 officers with him. And turns out the Queen wants Blade as her male king, because it is upon this prophecy, there's always some kind of prophecy that a Strix Queen will mate with a Daywalker, inside the most powerful vampires ever. Now, upon looking upon this on the Marvel Wiki, technically that's, you know, that might be the case, but you never really you know, show this character's supposed son ever. This like supposedly, because the Twitch, the Trix Queen is named Scylla, and supposedly her because her spawn, and supposedly same spawn as Blade, Zuka Ja, but is not a character that's actually been used since this story. So not something to worry about. But you know, this right-hand man Strix is getting a little perturbed given the fact that he wanted to be chosen. And of course, they are lovers, but she didn't choose him to be the specific mate. And the reason why he keeps showing up and intervening on somebody that might end up doing Blade in or causing harm to him, because she needs him perfectly healthy in order to have him mate with her. And then, yes, of course, ultimately she wants him dead, but not before. And she obviously using these guys as bait to draw him out. Especially after they found out they're working with the 7 that hunts down their kind. And this is where Blade ends up, you know, finding out about these officers and showing up at the estate of Timothy. And Timothy ends up giving Blade this black sword in order to deal with Scylla. And Blade thought this whole organization is freaking messed up, because it is, because this little baby is actually, you know, one of the previous chair members before Timothy. But the whole reverse aging thing, you see how stupid it is, because now he can't maintain his adult mindset because he keeps reverting to a baby mindset because he's at that point now. That's like, why have this? It's so dumb. At least make it make sense with, like, okay, you reverse to a point of you're being a teenager or something like that because of this particular magic or something like that. I can at least understand that, but why you keep reversing, take some kind of magic to keep making you reverse to the point of being like a baby? Does it stop at the point when you're a baby and you start aging forward again? And that's how it works to get like a semi immortality. I don't know. It sounds dumb. So dumb. But Blade takes the sword, but he's not like too thrilled with the idea of using it because he's sworn off of it. But once he get a phone call from Susan, that hearing that she's screaming, like the Tricks guy shows up, seemingly kidnapping her, he's like, F it, and takes the sword, and it's like, I'm gearing up because he really cares about Susan. But lo and behold, turns out Susan was actually Scylla in disguise. That's why she was never attacked by this guy. It was all a plan to earn, to win Eric's trust and get him to be smitten with her, so that way he will have no problem getting that close. This is a big betrayal for Blade. And these two end up having sex. And once the moment happens, Blade is like, just losing it. And once Blade fights off all these like Tricks guys, he takes the sword, he kills off all those guys, saves the 2 7 agents, kills the Strix henchmen, but still manages to make her escape. Timothy calls off the assassination on Blade once they realize, oh well, now like all these Strix are pretty much, the numbers are dwindled severely, and the Scylla person, since now being impregnated, will need some place to lie low upon giving birth, so there won't be any action from them for quite some time. And so we'll just let Blade deal with all the regular vampires as much as he like. And so, like, Blade, this adventure going off with not so happy ending with a supposedly kid out there. But like I said, this Sukaja is non-existent. But there is a child by Blade named Brilla. There's this other woman at some point along the way that Blade meets up with and had like a relationship with, and legit considered having a normal life with her, but the job kept coming, and people needed Blade to deal with these vampires, and stuff like that keeps cropping up, and she understood, but she ended up getting pregnant, having a child named Brilla, what's her name? Brielle Brooks. And there is a Blade comic there, as the miniseries has already been wrapped up. At some point in the future I will cover that, because I wanted to cover that in lieu of this, but I wanted to deal with like a actual solo like Blade book and not just Blade with a kid, because it's kind of like her story more so than his story anyway. But at some point I will cover that on the channel, because it was actually really good and I love the art. Because kind of doing this whole new Avengers type of situation, the next generation of heroes, and I can see like a good future with this type of character. She's really fun, very much like her dad. Then of course this is extra epilogue. It's technically 5 issues of this story, but it's an extra epilogue. I just want to cover it a little bit, because you'll see why in the end. This woman is, told to meet up with Blade from the old lady, and she's obviously like a rich lady, and she's having her son's having trouble seeing what things might be some kind of ghost or something, but nothing to be proven. Blade is skeptical, but their interactions obviously kind of like this whole because she's walking this park and she walks right past Blade and talks with this white man on the bench, and she's shocked to know, like, to see, oh, I didn't expect like an African American. I was like, why would you expect that? Oh, it's not like that. Like, like I have like, like my driver here, like, he's a lovely man, stand-up guy. Like, obviously I had no problem with, like, black people, like, and Blake was like, oh, because as long as they're not like a lazy ass. And of course, it didn't obviously insinuating the N-word, but this is a Max comic book, and it's like, I read like the Punisher Max, they use the N-word freely, but it's understandable because it's not meant for young children. But they censored it here for some reason. I suspect because there's a little child here, so they can't like actually say the word, but you obviously insinuate he said the word, so it's very confusing. But she takes offense that he took offense, and this whole back and forth here, but they kind of move past it and mention about the son seeing his dead father after they recently buried him. But Blake is skeptical, given a, but she said, like, hey, I haven't seen like 3 different psychologists, none of them like panned out, so somebody inform me of you. So Blade then decides, after hearing the story how like her and her husband was driving back from a party, some weird guy came running out of the middle of the street in the middle of nowhere, burst through the car window, as he's crawling through on the other side of the window through the driver door. He ends up scratching the neck of my husband, and he bled out to death. And then the Blade then comes to realize, oh yeah, that's something. So he goes to the grave of the husband, and seeing that, oh, the casket is empty. So come to realize, oh, this guy only shows up around a particular time when the boy is in bed. So they rush back to the house, and lying waiting is Blade, and he sees the vampire husband crawl through the window. Oh, before we get into that, there's a funny little interaction after Blade agrees to help her out, and the kid goes back in the car and asks, like, "Mommy, what is the lazy ass?" I was insinuating that he, said the word with the black driver, and the mom just looking like, "Oh my god!" And it's like, that part just made me laugh. I had to include this little part, but anyway. Blade points out that and this part is very confusing given the illustration, because as he digs up the coffin just to inspect to see if the body's still there, it's undisturbed. But here he insinuating that this guy burst out from the ground. Obviously has to burst through the freaking coffin at the same time too, so that part is super confusing. But anyway, he's going over about different kinds of risen vampires. This one will be called a husky. What do you call it? Victims of ghoul attacks involving blood contamination usually either turn into vampires or they just recover. But on rare occasions, a third scenario occurs. The victim appears to die but later awakens. We call them huskies. They're mostly brain dead and function by instincts. So that's what we're dealing with here, a husky. They just feed off of wild game. like rabbits. So Blade has this guy tied up, and the reason why he's coming back on instinct, because he's trying to, he's almost like, you know, like you said, ghoul like, where he's mumbles, but if you pay attention to how he's trying to say, is trying to tell his son that he loves him, because at least he had the time to say that to his wife, but he never got around to be able to say that final words to his son. So he got the chance to do it. Then Blade, when the wife and son leave out the room, he terminates the father officially, and he then explains to the wife that he was semi-responsible for what happened. The guy that was running in front of your car, he was running from me. I managed to deal with him, but it's because of the fact that he got away from me that brief moment is why what happened with your husband that shouldn't have happened. And then the son went up to talk to Blade. It's like, was my father a good monster? Because I know there's bad monsters. Was my father a good monster? And Blade, you know, not wanting to shatter any kind of illusion of what he sees, he looks up to his, obviously looked up to his father, and it's like, yeah, kid, yeah, your father was definitely a good monster. And of course, the mom does not blame Blade whatsoever. And it ends on a very cool note where, which I kind of wish we would have saw more in the Blade films, because obviously, because he goes to this Vampires Anonymous kind of situation where people who had lost loved ones to vampire attacks, I imagine, because obviously Blade didn't set this up, but the old lady set this up, so that way there's a support group for people who obviously deal with this. It's kind of like the way, if you watch the Jessica Jones Netflix show now on Disney Plus, where people who dealt with, had run-ins with the Purple Man, and he made them do certain things. There's a support group, so that way they can, you know, reasonably get through this and have the support necessary that nobody else would feel like they believe them, but they have like a, you know, a network to talk through this. And I thought this was very nice because, you know, vampires have been around for a very long time. It's not feasible for anybody to not, you know, believe when they deal with like a vampire attack. You'd be more inclined, given the fact that all kinds of things happen in the Marvel Universe, especially. There should be like support network. Matter of fact, there should be a support network for people who dealt with like super villains. Like my name is Jeff, and you know, I got, you know, attacked by, you know, Dr. Octopus. Hi, Jeff. Yeah, that kind of thing. Like, my name is Samantha, and I was attacked by I don't know, the Mole Man. Like, hi, Samantha, and things like that. Because I would imagine that would be kind of dramatic if you've been held hostage by a supervillain or whatever. But I thought that was kind of nice. So that's why I added in here. I was contemplating on leaving it out, but I thought it was nice enough to, like, okay, I'll just add in very briefly. But anyway, that was Marvel's Max Blade. I will see you guys later on in the week as I'll start covering the Blade films and the Blade anime series. But leave a like, share this with your friends, comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know what you think of the character Blade. Do you have a favorite Blade comic? And what you think of Mahershala Ali being Blade for the MCU? And because it's still kind of wish they just went with somebody else and not somebody they already used in an MCU type property. Anyway, I'll see you all later on in the week. Take care. Have a great night.